No. Get up here. Great job. Good job. Good job. Thank you. Surprise. I'm here. All right, let me take this off because you see me all dressed up. We're okay now. I've played that position already. So, yeah. Little story about today. I got a text. So usually I go to bed even on Saturdays like 9:30, 10 o'clock because my body automatically gets me up at 5, no matter what. So I was laying in bed and I was, as my wife calls it, doom scrolling, which is TikTok or Reels on Instagram or something, and I send them out to people, and maybe some of you have gotten some of mine, whatever. And so I had just put on a podcast, I think about the Spanish, what was it called? Spanish Revolution, the late 1930s, Spanish Civil War, thank you. Spanish Civil War, so I was getting ready to listen to that because I listened to boring history to fall asleep to. And I get a text. It's from Reverend Sonia. I'm like, well, what's going on? She goes, would you mind giving the talk? The sermon on Sunday. Well, you don't have to ask me twice. I love doing this. I love coming and talking to you guys, and I love talking about this stuff, and it gets me excited, and you guys are very kind and loving, and I look around, and everybody's like, all right, Nick, I'm sending you my energy. We can do this, And so I know you're doing this back in the back, yes. Sending me that good juju. And so I said, well, yeah, of course. What do you want me to talk on? She said, whatever moves you. Well, there's a lot of things that move me, but, and I said, well, what's the monthly theme? What's the monthly theme? And she says, joy. I said, okay, well, let me think about that a minute. And so I'm laying in bed. It's now 11 o'clock, and going, all right, so I just agreed to talk at Unity in less than 48 hours, and it's going to be on joy. So what can I talk about that? And, I was a minister or a spiritual leader at another church, and so I have sort of a collection of sermons that I could give. Well, I didn't want to give a whole new one, but there's really not time to write a whole new one, and I didn't want to recycle one. And so I said, wait a minute. For some reason, I am still on the chain message of what the musical team is going to be up here performing. I don't mind it. I mean, I get it Wednesday or Thursday whenever Keith puts his stuff together, and so I'm like, let me see what they're singing. Maybe that will inspire me. So I looked at what the solo was. It was Man in the Mirror. I went, wait a minute. Maybe I could tie that in somehow. Maybe I could tie that into what I'm talking about, because I've heard that song so many times. And so I went, well, there it is. So on 11:30 on Friday night, my talk was starting to reveal itself to me. I went, well, let me roll over and go back to bed, or let me go to sleep and work on this tomorrow. My wife's going to love it when I lock myself in my office with my books and my computer and stuff and get this written. But as the thing is developing in my head, I'm like, what is joy? Where does it come from? Can we create it? Or is it something that we discover? Is joy from somewhere out there? Someplace out there waiting for everything to finally fall into place in my life? Or does it begin with the man or the woman in the mirror? What does joy actually look like? Does it always look like smiling? Does it always sound like laughter? All right, speaking of laughter, how many of you remember Mary Poppins? Mary Poppins. Some of you probably saw it in a movie theater. You might remember the part where Mary Poppins and Bert start laughing, and they float up to the ceiling. Right? Talk about, I once knew a man named Smith with a wooden leg, and the guy goes, what's the name of his other leg? Before long, they're all floating up to the ceiling. I loved that scene as a kid because I secretly hope that laughter could make people fly. Although, personally, I'm afraid of heights, so I don't know how well I do with that. But you know the kind of laughter that you have where you can't catch your breath. The kind of laughter where somebody says something and somebody says something else and everybody's laughing. You don't really remember why you started laughing in the first place. So much that your stomach hurts and tears are starting to fall down your face. And maybe, excuse me here for a moment, but you feel you need to change your undergarments. You can't explain why it was funny anymore. Those moments never about possessions or promotions at work or politics. They're almost always about people, about connection, about being completely present. Maybe that's one of the first clues about joy. It isn't something we manufacture, it's something we experience. It bubbles up unexpectedly, almost like it's been there all along. Then another memory floated through my head. Memory from my childhood. And I've spoken on this gentleman before. My parents had a friend who was a Hindu Swami named Shantanan Saraswati. Now imagine being 10 or 11 or 12 years old, having a Hindu Swami come and stay at your house for 3 or 4 days. You know, you lived in sort of a redneck area of central Pennsylvania, and here's this guy walking around in orange robes through the neighborhood. Just imagine what your neighbors were thinking. Boy, those Humphreys are at it again. Imagine having breakfast with you. You know, you come down, there's this Swami sitting at your breakfast table, you know, drinking his tilk, which is tea with milk in it. Or calling you Mr. President. Because you told him once that you wanted to be President of the United States. I thought he was one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. He spoke softly and smiled a lot. I thought this was completely normal. You know, why not? Why not have a Swami call you Mr. President? He would often come to the house, and when he did, my parents would invite friends over, and he'd give different talks on different books that he had written at the time. And during these talks, I can remember him stopping, smiling, his mischievous smile as he had, and asking one simple question. What gets you juicy? As a little boy, I thought, what kind of question is that? And in fact, let's be honest, it's a little risque. But 40 years later, I'm still thinking about that question. Because I finally think I understand, finally feel I understand what he meant. He wasn't asking what makes you busy. He wasn't asking what makes you successful. He wasn't asking what impresses the neighbors, because he could care less about his orange robes going down the street. He was asking what brings you alive, what fills you with energy. What makes your heart beat just a little bit faster? When do you lose track of time because you're so completely immersed in what you're doing? When do you feel most like you? I think there's another way of asking that. Where do you experience joy? For me, personally, that came last week, not just this past week, the week before. The 12th through the 17th, I was with my people, my peeps. We were in San Diego. Beautiful, beautiful. Although it was a little warm for San Diego, it was 80 degrees out there. And at night it got down to about 70. I had to wear slacks. But with 20,000 other GIS professionals, as we like to be called, map nerds. Or geo-geeks. The software that we use is called Esri. It's sort of the Microsoft of the GIS world, or the mapping world, was holding their annual convention. And 20,000 map nerds and geo-geeks got together to talk about and get excited about maps and data and being people who help citizens and governments answer questions about the question of where things happen, where crimes happen, where flooding happens, where we can build new subdivisions, where we shouldn't build new subdivisions. All of these different things, helping communities solve problems. That is what got me juicy 2 weeks ago. And every single year that I've gone the past 8 years, I come home, I come back here to Houston, yes, trying to remember that I have to drink more water because I will melt in this heat. But I come back remembering why I fell in love with my profession. Listening to the founder of Esri talk about maps, not just to make pretty pictures, but to help communities make better decisions, to help those first responders save lives, to protect natural resources, to understand this changing world we're in. I sit in classes and seminars and lectures and go to socials after work and talk with people throughout the world. I mean, I think they said there was over 100 different countries represented here, all talking about what they're doing. And here I am working in Montgomery County, this little Texas, well, not so little, but this county here in Texas. But I'm talking to people from Minnesota, from Maine, from Bangladesh, from the Congo, and Egypt, and England, just all over the world, learning how they're doing the same thing I'm doing to communicate and answer the question of where. My job really isn't about maps, it's about people. Maps are just simply one way that I help serve the people. And I leave San Diego every year asking myself, why can't I feel this inspired all year long? Maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe it's on a conference. Maybe it's spending time with your grandchildren. Maybe it's sitting on a fishing boat at sunrise. Maybe it's painting or gardening. Maybe it's just at that quiet time in the morning, having a cup of coffee before anyone else wakes up in the house. It's those moments, those clues. They tell us something about who we really are. They remind us that underneath all the deadlines, all the responsibilities, the worries, the endless notifications on our phones, even if it's from Keith, let me know what music's going to be played, there's still a person capable of wonder, capable of gratitude, capable of joy. And that's when I begin wondering, maybe the question isn't how do I become joyful? Maybe the better question is, what keeps me from noticing the joy that's already trying to find me? Wow. So it brings us back to the question, if joy is trying to find us, if joy is something we remember instead of something we manufacture, then why does it seem to disappear so easily? Because let's be honest, life isn't always joyful. Some of you walked into the sanctuary here today carrying burdens no one knows about. Some are worried about a loved one or are grieving. Some are struggling with health issues. Some are wondering how they're going to pay the bills. Some are carrying loneliness. Some are carrying fear. So if I were just to stand up here and simply say, choose joy, that could be construed as insulting. As though joy were nothing more than positive thinking. I don't feel that's what joy is. And I don't think that's what great spiritual tradition teaches us either. A few years ago, Sharon Salzberg shared a story about the Dalai Lama. She was backstage with him before one of his talks. Now think about this man, this Dalai Lama. His homeland has been invaded. He's been kicked out into exile. He's watched his people suffer. If anyone has earned the right to become bitter, it might be him. But Sharon noticed something remarkable about this man. He was still laughing. still smiling, still joking, completely at ease. She asked him, "How can you be so joyful after everything you've experienced?" His answer, in essence, was, if I allow anger and hatred to fill my heart, then they've taken from me more than my country. They've taken my freedom. By the yeses I've heard in the audience, that sentence hit you like it did me, like a freight train. Because suddenly I realized joy isn't pretending that life is easy. Joy isn't suffering. Joy is refusing to let suffering become the author of your story. Amen. Jesus teaches us something like this. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says the kingdom of God is within you, not somewhere else. Not after you die, not after all your problems are solved. It's within you now. Amen. Right here. Then, of course, because I was raised on it, I started thinking, what does the Course say? The Course in Miracles, that is. One of my favorite lines is, it's not up to you what you learn, but whether you learn through joy or through pain. Course in Miracles teaches that joy is not dependent on external circumstances, but arises from a shift in perception, from fear to love. By practicing forgiveness, releasing grievances, and trusting in the present, we align with our natural state of joy. I do feel that that one of our natural states is that of joy. And as we get more joy, as we have more joy, we become more joyful towards others. It's not something that we collect. Maybe it's something we give away. I love that in several spiritual traditions, this is all spoken about. The Buddhists talk about compassion. Jesus talks about love. The Course talks about forgiveness. And here at Unity, we talk about that Christ within each of ourselves. Different languages, different cultures, different centuries. But yet somehow they all keep pointing back towards the same destination. Some of you may remember Dr. Love, Leo Buscaglia. He was another person that was often videotapes were played, yes, VCR tapes. We did not have, what was the other one? Beta. We went straight to VHS at my house. We didn't have beta tapes, but VHS tapes of Leo Buscaglia speaking from PBS. I still remember because he was always sweaty and wiping his brow, and sometimes I like to mimic him. But he spent his career speaking and talking on one simple truth. People flourish when they are loved. One of my favorite thoughts of his is that life isn't measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take away our breath. Think about that. The moments that take our breath away. Holding a newborn child. Watching a sunset. Hearing a piece of music that somehow says exactly what your heart couldn't put into words. Yes. For me, it's almost any Grateful Dead song. Seeing someone forgive. Watching strangers help each other in a disaster. It's these moments, these holy moments, whether we call them miracles or grace or simply joy. That brings me back to today's solo, Man in the Mirror. I've heard that song a dozen times, as I said before, probably 100 times, hundreds of times. But laying in bed on Friday, reading Keith's text, I heard it differently. The song isn't really about changing the world. It's about where change begins. It begins with me. That's both wonderful and frustrating. Most of us would much rather change everybody else. If my spouse would just do this. If my boss would just do this. If my subordinate would just do this. If my kids would just do this. If Congress would just do this. If my neighbor would just do this. If this guy in front of me would just do this. Life would be wonderful, wouldn't it? But Michael Jackson says no. Start with the person looking back at you. That's not just good music. Well, for coming from Keith, that's just not great music. That's good spirituality. Because every major faith tradition eventually brings us back to that same place. Not to fixing everyone, but to examining our own hearts. Maybe that's why joy can never be found by waiting for the world to become perfect. Because that's our plan. We're going to be waiting for a very, very long time. Instead, joy quietly asks, who are you becoming right now? Something happened a few weeks ago, and I didn't expect it. Many of you know my birthday is on the 3rd of July. And being that that's close enough to Independence Day, the 4th has always been intertwined with my birthday. Growing up, it was always a big deal at my house. My parents would have a 4th of July party. We'd climb to the top of the hill and watch the fireworks. You know, the whole country celebrated my birthday. It's wonderful. Until you turn 21 and most of the bars are closed and you can't celebrate. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But there's always fireworks and family and stuff going on. And maybe a few too many red, white, and blue cakes for my taste. I even told my wife when I got married, I do not want a red, white, and blue flag cake ever again for my birthday. I'm done. I'm done with the red, white, and blue cakes. So my wife got me a Darth Vader cake instead. That's love. This year, though, my parents called me up a couple of days before my birthday and said, we just sent you your gift. Usually they send me money, which is wonderful, but we sent you a gift this time. I was like, oh, really? What is it? Oh, it's not your birthday. We can't tell you. You got to wait. They sent me a beautiful framed copy of the Declaration of Independence. It is beautiful. I'm still trying to decide whether I want to hang it in my home office or my office downtown. And I thought, well, that's certainly appropriate for somebody born on the 3rd of July. But then something else happened. It started bringing up memories of my childhood that I hadn't thought about in years. When I was a little boy, I wanted to be president of the United States. Not for power or fame. I honestly believe that being president helped people. And I wanted to make the country better. I wanted to serve. Remember that Hindu Swami friend of mine, Shantanan Saraswati? Every time he visited, he would look at me with that wonderful smile and say, Mr. President, how are you today? Mr. President, what do you think? As a little boy, I believed him. I believed that I could be president. But somewhere along the way, life happened. School, the army, bills, responsibilities, disappointments, dreams changed. Priorities shifted. Before you knew it, I was no longer measuring my life by wonder. I was measuring it by my calendar. Joni Mitchell captured something like this in the song The Circle Game. I'm not going to sing it, so don't worry. I'm just going to quote it. So the years spin by, and now the boy is 20. Those dreams have lost a lot of grandeur coming true. There'll be new dreams, maybe better dreams, and plenty before the last revolving year is through. Somewhere in all those circles of going around and around on that merry-go-round, many of us stop asking, what makes me come alive? Instead, we begin asking, what has to get done today? I got Josh coming over with the new lawnmower, and Jen wants to go to Costco, and I'm going to need to take a nap after this. And what has to get done today? I think we all can relate to that. We're becoming masters of our calendars and amateurs of listening to our hearts. I don't think joy disappears or gets buried. I think it gets buried under obligations, buried beneath fear, beneath expectations, buried beneath the stories we tell ourselves about who we're supposed to be. Like I took the jacket off. But every once in a while, something uncovers it. Sometimes it's a song or an old photograph. Sometimes it's a conference in San Diego. Sometimes it's a gift from your parents. Sometimes it's a question from a Hindu Swami that you've carried for 40 years. What gets you juicy? I don't think it's really a question of about happiness. I think it's a question about purpose. Because we are living our purpose, joy has room to breathe. I think that's what Jesus was speaking about when he talked about the abundant life. That's what the Buddha spoke about awakening. That unity talks about the divine spark within all of us. Different traditions, one invitation to wake up. Remember who you are now. Now, before I close, I want to circle back one last time to today's music, Man in the Mirror. It's one of those songs that has survived the decades because its message never gets old. Excuse me. Realize I'm slurring my words and all I'm drinking is water. It's one of those songs that have survived the decades. Because if you want to change the world, start with yourself. Not because the world doesn't need changing. It certainly does. But because every act of kindness, every moment of forgiveness, every decision to respond with love instead of fear changes the world in ways we probably could never measure. Amen. Maybe that's what joy does. Joy isn't loud. Joy doesn't demand attention. Joy quietly spreads. It spreads from one person to another to another. And just like the laughter in Mary Poppins, one person begins to laugh, then another, and then another. Before long, everyone is lifted to the ceiling. Now, I'd like to leave you with homework. Now, as a kid, I used to hate homework, of course, but now I'm going to give you some homework. Before you turn on the television tomorrow, before you look at your phone, which I know is difficult, before you check your email, before you start making a list of everything that has to be done, I want you to stand in the mirror and look. Really look. Not at your hair, not at a few more wrinkles or a few more pounds you may have gained, but look into your own eyes. Look at the divine person created in the image and likeness of that which is greater than all of us. Look at the person that life has shaped. Look at the person who has survived every difficult day that brought you to this very moment. Then ask yourself one simple question. What gets me juicy? What brings me alive? What reminds me of who I really am? And then have the courage to make room for a little bit more of that in your life. Because I have a feeling that when we discover our own joy, we make it a little easier for everyone else to discover theirs. Thank you. Amen.